James
with the
Gladstone.
rehearsed speech.
Yeah,
Yeah, it seemed very rehearsed.
it seemed very
Yeah.
rehearsed and it was very just odd. And
Hmm.
their press conferences since the hiring of their head coach, I'm just like,
Duval.
what is going on in Jacksonville? What really is in that water? Because, at first I thought it was just a coach, Gladstone looks like a 12-year-old, looks like he's
Hmm.
probably still in high school. Um, and then I just saw it, and I like the whole time I was watching the press conference introducing Travis Hunter. I was like, what is this guy on? He must be on some good stuff down there in
Yeah.
Jacksonville,
Yep.
because this guy, I don't know.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to a wonderful episode of Banter on the Rocks. Today's Monday, April 28th. Myself, Tim here. Got John, of course. Happy to be back in the home base setting
Yes.
after last week's um, live pod, and that was a ton of fun. Had a
Yes,
really
it
good
was.
time doing the in-person pod. Good experience. Definitely more of
Hmm.
that in the future. That is the plan
Yeah.
for us to have a studio one day, and a little foreshadowing, hopefully.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so before we get started, though, we always want to stop and talk a little bit about our brand ambassadorship with Find the Good. And Find the Good is focused on that good in society and building a community of people who want to help find that good. For all purchases, Find the Good gives back 10% to Mental Health of America organization. And when you order, use our promo code BANTER805 and you'll receive 10% off of your purchase. So that's 10% for you and 10% for mental health. Remember to use Banter 805 for that 10% off. And the mission for Find the Good is simple. Find the Good is here to get you through those bad days, the breakups, the ups and downs, and whatever else stands between you and a smile on your face. I
Yeah.
am repping the swag today.
Nice.
Was repping it at the park with the kiddo earlier. And I've actually, where was I? I was at the doctor's the other day, and the nurse walks in, and I was wearing the sweater, and she commented on it and said she loved it. So Find the
Nice.
Good, you have
Yeah.
not only a great brand, but good design. So
Yes. That's awesome.
yeah, totally. I've gotten a lot of compliments on it actually. So
Nice.
it's good to rep the swag.
Yeah.
And the so moving along to the items that we're going to discuss today. Of course, we'll
Mhm.
have our banter takes that we'll start off with. We're going to have NFL draft recap. The NFL draft finished up over
Mhm.
this past weekend. Lots to talk about there. NBA playoffs. Got games currently ongoing. Go Warriors.
Yes.
Let's see what happens. It's a close game so far. And then we have Sounds of Banter, where we'll talk a little bit about music and so on and so forth. And then, of course, much more will be intertwined
Mhm.
within all of those topics. Now, of course, before we really move on to the episode, we're going to talk about our banter drinks of the week. I will start us off here. I am playing it with a beer. We're going with Pacifico this
Okay.
evening, John.
Nice.
Yeah, good little, nice little refresher. It got warm today.
No,
Rained a little
okay.
bit over the weekend, so it
Oh,
got
yeah.
warm.
Yeah.
Let's get a cerveza going.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, Pacifico, good, nice, crisp beer.
Hmm.
Yeah, it rained. It's, I would say, sprinkled probably down here over the weekend. It was a little
Okay,
chilly, but warming up again. Hopefully, here we might get one more rain. We'll see. Um,
good.
but yeah, no, today I am doing a guava with tequila. So a little bit of
Ooh.
guava juice and some tequila as always, trying to finish that Dos Hombres bottle off. So always good, refreshing. Uh love tequila. So any tequila companies out there want to sponsor us, let us know. We'll we'll,
Yeah,
we'll rep
it
it.
speaking of that, John, curious, out of
Yeah.
10, what would
Mhm.
you give Dos Hombres?
Um if I want to do shots, I'm gonna give it like a 4 or 5. But for a
Okay.
mixer, it's not bad. I'd give it probably like an 8 out of 10.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah,
Okay.
not too
Yeah.
bad for a mixed drink tequila, but like straight up shots, not my go-to. I think I'd still probably prefer um yeah, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Coralejo,
Oh, yeah.
Patron, Don Julio. But like I say, for mixed drinks, not a bad choice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
you mentioned Corlejo. I still have just flashbacks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That blue
Yeah.
bottle.
The blue one, the red one's a tough one too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good
Yeah,
stuff though. It's
it
a good
is.
party tequila,
It is.
no doubt.
It is. But yeah,
Memorable brand.
yeah, no, for sure. But we'll go into our banter takes. So as always, our banter takes are takes that we share with each other. We don't know what they are until right now. And we're gonna roll with them until either they get proven right, wrong, or until we decide to move forward from it. So um my take, renowned astronaut Katy Perry is now a hero after fighting off an extraterrestrial venting system at her concert.
Oh,
Man, so I'm not too sure what she fought off, but man, if there's a venting system and she had to fight it off, man, she's a jack of all trades, because she's an
yeah.
astronaut from what she's reported, pop star. Has she done movies? I don't think she's a movie star yet.
No, but she is a judge, American Idol, right?
American Idol. Oh yeah,
Yeah, judge.
renowned
Court judge
TV.
maybe.
Yeah.
Judicial. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, a venting system at her concert. That's pretty needed, because it gets warm in those concerts. I always
Yeah.
feel like when I go to concerts, those stadiums, especially closed stadiums, they pump a lot of AC in there, and if they didn't, man, it would be bad for some people. You don't want to see people passing out,
No.
fainting from the heat, especially in that mosh pit. I think we saw a little bit of it with the Taylor Swift concert when it was I think it was in Brazil, somewhere, in South America,
Yeah.
where someone, like fainted during the concert. She stopped it because of it, because of the heat. So, you
Hmm.
know, if Katy Perry was a hero to save people from passing out, kudos to her.
For sure. Yeah. You got to fight off the venting systems. The way I see it is like those old TVs, you kind of have to like slap it on the
Oh
side
yeah.
and then it
Hmm.
gets, a little bit more clearer photo. I think that's what she was doing with the AC system, just giving it a few little slaps. She had that. I don't know if you saw some of the clips, John. I might have sent you one where she had like the Darth Maul style, like
Oh, okay.
lightsaber, it looked
Hmm.
like, and she was just like twirling it out there, fighting off some aliens, something like that. And then the venting system, I think, was the final boss.
Yeah.
And she made her way through, and the venting system just stopped being a monster
Yeah.
and started
It,
working as it should.
it realized it wasn't going to be able to take down Katy Perry.
That's
You
right.
see her coming. She just came from space. She came from this exploration of 11 minutes. It was like, I'm not going to mess with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, this all brings me back to one thing, John, where, I in previous interviews, people, in my fire academy, for
Hmm.
example, we had interview, consultations where they're like, hey, do this, do that.
Hmm.
But the big thing I took away from that is if you've done it once, you're an expert on it and own up to that. So,
Okay.
she's been to space, John. So
Yeah.
she's an astronaut and,
Eh.
she's renowned for that now. And then, she's a hero because, she can fight off villains like a
Yeah.
venting system.
A venting
So,
system. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. And on another note though, on her concert,
Uh-huh.
she's I guess most recently, I think she's back east if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken at the moment. Um, I saw a clip of somebody who went to try to buy some of her tickets that
Hmm.
are still available at face value.
Okay.
And I think it was the MSG Madison Square Garden
Hmm.
event,
Oh,
and the purchase price of one ticket, I believe, was $400, and that was
oh.
like not even floor
I was
seats. It
about to
was like,
say that should be close to floor, meeting
yeah,
her.
Nah, it's
No.
not.
Oh
So
man.
$400 to watch her fight off the venting system.
Hmm.
I guess it there's sequels on sequels of the battle. So
Yeah, it's something you may never see again. So those people that were
yeah,
there to witness it in person have a good story, have a good memory that not many people could say that Perry fought off a venting system at the concert and they witnessed it all.
absolutely. Yeah, not many people can say that. It's a
Yeah,
rarity, once in a lifetime opportunity. Um, and there's lots of tickets available, evidently,
yeah,
at non-resale value. So,
yeah,
it's out there. If anybody wants to go see astronaut, singer, judge Katy Perry,
yeah.
she's
A jack
touring.
of all trades, Katy
Jack
Perry.
of all trades.
She could
That's
do
right.
everything. We'll see what she does next. You know.
We'll see. We'll see. Maybe she hinted at something with that flower she had in space.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
she'll be like
Maybe
landscape
a
architect,
botanist.
a botanist. Yes, very good. All right. So John sent me my hot take here. Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith has been the biggest re-release ever. This is the change in Star Wars content that needs to happen to bring back Star Wars fans to greatness and the glory it used to be. Yeah, completely agree. We've talked on this show, John, about, just the rejuvenation that Star
Yeah,
Wars needs. We kind of brought up the topic that, you know, got popular, when
it
we
did.
posted it with, a possible R-rated film in the future of
Hmm.
Star Wars and how that would be a pretty cool kind of background. So these re-releases I think are awesome. It gets people back out to the theater. We talked about like just
Yeah,
childhood memories of waiting in long lines to get into the theater
yeah.
for episode one, two, three. So having this come back relived is, I think, a step in the right direction for Star Wars.
Hmm.
And you said that there was one of our takes here was Lucasfilm now has a new CEO, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
No, that was someone else, but the Lucasfilm CEO is stepping down, so I think they're trying to
Oh,
find
okay.
Kathleen Kennedy, I think it's her name. So she's
Yes.
going out, and now I think they're sort of trying to figure out who, and there's rumors of people who it should be. One person, John Farva,
Oh God. Yeah, it'd
creator
be
of
so good.
Iron Man,
Yeah.
Mandalorian. So him, and then the creator of oh man, the Star Wars anime, the
Oh,
like cartoon show, the
also
Clone Wars.
can't forget John Favreau,
Yeah.
famous replacements linebacker as well. He'll
Yes.
attack
Yeah.
anything he sees that is red. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but yeah. What's his name? Trying to find the director.
But as you're searching for that,
Hmm.
John, pop in anytime. But
Yeah.
I think that maybe the changes, like you said, maybe it comes from the top and kind of works its way down. Again, this is a really good transition point for Star
Yeah.
Wars for the future. So
Yeah.
excited to see what else.
Yeah, it's Dave Filoni. So he
Oh,
created Rebels, a lot of those cartoons that have great stories, and really brought a lot of Star Wars fans. Brought those stories between episode three, episode two and three. More of Anakin's story. As a
uh-huh.
Jedi, Asuka. So that's the two I think front runners that people want, but who knows what Disney will do. I went to the screening of, or I
Hmm.
went to one of the shows of Revenge of the Sith, and just amazing to see it again at the big screen and seeing that movie out of all of them. So much greatness. It was fun. I had enjoyed it. Vera liked it. I would say the one thing Vera didn't like was that the audience wasn't like cheering. They weren't like
I was
excited.
gonna ask.
Um, our showing wasn't like that. Maybe we just picked a too early of a showing. Maybe the later ones did. Um, I don't know. Did you see the video of Hayden Christensen and Samuel L. Jackson showing up to
I
um,
did.
the theater in LA and Hollywood?
Man, yeah, how sick is that? Just to get like, the icons of Star
Hmm.
Wars showing up for you. That's so
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, no. So it was awesome. So yeah, this re-release, one of the biggest re-releases ever in movie history. I think we might start seeing this a little bit more for some films, especially for those that
Yep.
are fans that didn't get to see the movie, when it came out in theaters 20 plus years ago. Even like the first episodes. So I'm curious to see where Star Wars goes. This was going to be one of the takes I was going to give you last week too when we were live. That
Hmm.
Star Wars needs to make that change. Andor, the series, season 2 that's out right now on Disney Plus
Yep.
needs to, which as of right now is doing great. It's a great
Okay.
show. Needs to do well. The new movie's coming out. It was Star Wars Celebration 2 weeks ago.
Hmm.
um the new Grogu and Mandalorian movie that needs to be a hit for Star Wars
Yeah.
just to sort of start taking those steps into greatness. And then that other movie they announced, I think it's a movie, the one with Ryan Gosling, the Starfighter one. That one I'm
Okay. Yeah.
pretty sick to, excited to see how it
Mhm.
comes out. But like I say, it's like there's a lot in the horizon, but it needs to be good because if it isn't good, you're gonna lose a lot of the old fans. You're not gonna make new fans, and there's other series that are gonna take over.
For sure. And then maybe at that point that goes to a little bit more drastic change, right? At
Yeah.
who's leading this.
Hmm.
And maybe that drastic change comes with John Favreau. And
Hmm.
maybe I'm biased. I don't know. I just I really like his work, and I feel like, to be honest with you, he's going to bring out a little bit more of
Hmm.
that violent side of
Yeah.
Star Wars in a way. It kind of sounds like the other person that you had mentioned, forget his name,
Hmm.
sorry. Um, you know, will come in and maybe bring up some great storylines, but keep it
Hmm.
with the traditional family friendly Star Wars. But I think,
Hmm.
and a lot of fans will like that. We'd certainly had
Yeah.
commenters in our short that we're coming up with like storylines that would be more family friendly and that, they
Yeah.
don't want to see anything R-rated. But we also had a lot on the other side too that, and I just feel like John Favreau might fit that mold a little bit better.
Yeah.
And because we saw it with a lot of Marvel too, there's
Hmm.
there's definitely a violent side to it.
Hmm.
And, the storylines were great because, you had dramatic events and,
Yeah.
characters go through things that, are gut-wrenching. So,
Hmm.
I like that aspect. I like that feel for things. Maybe that's the direction that they go in the future. But again, the lineup you mentioned, uh, really stoked for. I have to tune
Yeah.
into Andor. I've really
Hmm.
liked these series that Disney Plus is releasing with Star Wars. So
Yeah.
I'm that's another one to binge up to the point we're at. They do week by week releases on Disney
Yeah,
Plus, right?
Disney Plus does week by week, so you
Yeah.
can't binge it all at once. So if you want to binge it, you just gotta wait till the end, and just watch it all
Yep.
at once. But
For
yeah,
sure. For sure.
no, yeah, but yeah, like I said, David Filoni, um, he's like executive producer to a lot of these shows right now. He's the creative director for Lucasfilm, so I think that's the route they're gonna take. Even though I'd want to see John Favreau, but I think they'll bring him in for a movie or two because they're good friends, and
Yeah.
I think they could do great for the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
What's to come? But like if you haven't seen the I don't know if people call it cartoons, anime, uh, but the Star Wars Rebels and the Clone Wars,
Hmm.
great, great TV, great shows,
Okay.
great
I'll
story.
definitely watch those.
Yeah, yeah. So,
I'll tune in.
but yeah, that's Star Wars. Like I said, I'm a fan of Star Wars. I was excited for the re-release. Once I heard about it, we planned for it. You know, uh, Accountant 2 came out this week too, and I would prefer to see Star Wars. So that shows a lot.
Yeah, when you said you were at the movies the other day, I
Yeah,
was like, "Oh, did you go see The Accountant too?" Because that's definitely garnered some headlines. I
yeah,
feel like with that release, but you're like, "Nah, how about the re-release?" And I'm like, "Oh,
yeah,
yeah, nah, that sounds good too." Yeah, it's a
yeah,
good movie weekend. I love it. I love to see that
yeah.
these releases and movie weekends are a big deal right now.
Yeah. It started that summer blockbuster that we talked about a few weeks ago. So I'm
Absolutely.
excited. But yeah, that's Star Wars. My next take: if the Lakers get dropped in the first round of the playoffs, it will end the GOAT conversation for LaQueen James. I
Oh,
truly do think it might end that conversation because he got rid of Anthony Davis. He got Luca, who you could say Luca sort of took the Mavericks to the finals last year and is one of the best players in the NBA. And they can't beat a Minnesota Timberwolves team, which nothing against the Timberwolves, but their best player, they got one good player. The rest are great role players. Nothing too amazing that really should wow you. Um, so they got to figure something out. LeBron James has to stop complaining, has to just play ball, stop trying to flop. Uh, you know, the play, I think their last game, I think I sent you the video where he was sort of saying, he hit him in the hand and he's like, well, that's part of the ball. Like, no, like let's not say that because it isn't part of the ball. If it was
right.
the opposite way, you would be complaining, if they called it a steal, you would be chewing out the ref, you would be complaining to the NBA, Adam Silver, like, no, and it's like that's not the only play that lost it for you. There's a lot of other things that lead up to a loss. You can't just blame it on one play because I think they were up in that game. They were playing well, and Anthony Edwards brought that team back. So and Anthony Edwards, like the that's like MJ. It's sort of showing that MJ is a lot better than LeBron. And for all these new basketball kiddos watching that say LeBron's the GOAT, never saw the old school basketball, like, you know, no, I've never. LeBron's greatness. LeBron is amazing. LeBron's gonna go down in the Hall of Fame as one of the top NBA players. But for me, Michael Jordan is the GOAT. Then I have Kobe, and then I have LeBron.
Yep.
So he's top three, but I got Kobe and Jordan there. So if they get eliminated by these Timberwolves, by Anthony Edwards, I don't know what's gonna happen. Is Luca gonna get traded? Is all the bench gonna get traded? I'm hearing Lopez is their next center. Brook Lopez, nothing against the dude. He's doing nothing for the Bucks. Look at the Bucks. It's Giannis or
Yeah.
nothing. So it's like you really think Lopez is gonna make you a championship contending team? That dude's older. I don't
hmm
think he has what he used to have. So they got to find a way to get through this round. Um, but it's not looking good.
No, definitely not. Yeah, they need that big, and maybe this is where that Mark Williams trade,
Yeah.
that didn't go through is really costing them. We kind of talked about that
hmm
where, that could have been the difference maker for them,
hmm
but without having that big now, things are really showing. And yeah, with LeBron all together, yeah, the goat's right here for sure.
Yeah.
I'm all for Jordan being the goat. Personally, somebody that's up there with, just me being a Warriors fan is Curry. And, I just feel like when it comes to finals and, sticking with just one
hmm
team and completing a legacy there, I think Curry has him beat personally.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to take away from everything that LeBron James has done for the game, the absolute, freak he is.
Yeah.
And he's an absolute generational, once in a lifetime type player. But I just think that, late in his career, obviously he's playing up to 40 years old now. It's just you drop series like this and the way that they're doing it, you went and added a guy like Luca,
hmm
who, for sure he carried the
Yeah.
Mavericks, through to the finals last year. And, then you're dealing with, you're talking about foul calls after the end of
hmm
games, and that
Yeah.
was clearly a foul. And any day of the week, LeBron is going to make a big old fuss about
hmm
that. If that's him, like you said,
hmm
he's La Flop. He's known for
Yeah.
that. He's spends a lot of time, and I've seen countless videos of LeBron not running down the floor complaining about calls too, and
hmm
that's really that ain't it either.
Yeah.
It's you got to play both ends well. And, of course, he has famous moments, his chase down block against
Hmm.
Iguodala, but those days are gone. And I just think that the way that I don't know if his career's over
Hmm.
after this season, if he's going to continue on, maybe he wants to play with Bryce in the
Yeah.
future as well. But, just I think his legacy is kind of taking a hit here because the Lakers were supposed to win this series, and we
Hmm.
knew that the West was going to be a battle no matter what.
Yeah.
But Anthony Davis, like you said, he's doing it, you know, large in part for himself,
Hmm.
but then he has good role players around him. But
Hmm.
LeBron has Luca, and they're just not getting it done. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, shots fired with LaQueen there, John.
Yeah.
It's looking that way though.
It's looking that way, and like I think even if they get past this round, like they're gonna have a tough matchup anywhere. The Warriors or the Rockets, they they have great big guys. I think better than the Timberwolves, and then if you get past them, you're facing the Clippers, the Nuggets, or OKC, which has great scoring and some of the best big men too. OKC has the twin, double big guy, um,
Mhm.
Harvenstein and Chet. They they won't be able to defend that. They won't be getting rebounds against those two.
Right.
So there's a lot the Lakers need to do. Let's see. This is LeBron's legacy game, and I'm gonna say it's LeBron's legacy game because he's trying to be the GOAT. You
Hmm.
can't blame Luca. You got to take control of this team. You got to show why you're trying to consider yourself the GOAT because Jordan would do what Steph did the last game where he was asking for the ball. He
Yeah.
would cuss his own team, his players out that he wanted the ball. So um, it's what LeBron has to do. He has to show it, and if he can't, well then don't don't call yourself the GOAT. Call yourself one of the best players in current NBA. And
Yeah.
currently in the NBA, the current era, but not the GOAT for me.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely on the same page. I just I feel like the GOAT conversation, in my opinion, just because championships are heavily
Hmm.
weighed, it's just as soon as he starts losing so many of them, and I know he's going up against, obviously modern day Warriors.
Hmm.
He's had run-ins with Celtics in the
Yeah.
past, Lakers, of course. So there's been those times, but overall, he makes it there a lot, but
Hmm.
he also loses a lot. So,
Yeah.
it just doesn't get him over the hump. Obviously,
Hmm.
he's teamed up with players and kind of started that big three
Hmm.
type mentality.
Yeah.
And, that's part of his legacy. I hate to
It
say
is.
it. He won that one in Cleveland, which was great. But yeah, it's a look that doesn't that just kind of tarnishes some things,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And of course, Jordan had Pippen, but I just feel like that's a little different. Pippen's
Yeah.
obviously incredible player, but it's different than teaming up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, or
Hmm.
teaming up with Luca or Anthony Davis,
Yeah.
Kyrie.
Yeah. Yeah. He
It's a
he
little
would have
different.
had to team up. Jordan would have to team up with like Charles, Karl
Yeah.
Malone, Stockton to sort of make that big three. And if he would have, they would have won till Jordan and all of them decided to retire, I think,
Hmm.
but he didn't, so yeah. I think the losses are gonna hurt him in that GOAT conversation. Um and then I'm curious, and like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about playoffs. Depending on how the Cavs do this year, if the Cavs could win it, say they win it all, it shows that LeBron LeBron's not going to be the greatest in Cleveland anymore. It's whoever could win them a championship because LeBron brought them a championship, but look who might possibly bring them another championship. It's like crazy to see.
Yeah, but hey, he's the kid from Akron, okay?
Hmm.
It's
I
that's
guess.
his go-to slogan. But I another thing I was thinking about, John, was is his future jersey retirements. Obviously, he's won championships in three different places.
Yeah.
W- does he get him retired in multiple places? Out of your opinion, where does he get the jersey retired?
I think for sure Cleveland,
Uh-huh.
and then I think he gets it in Miami as well.
Yeah.
And even though I don't think unless he wins this year and maybe another one, I don't think he should get it for LA.
Yep.
But Rob Pelinka is going to give it to him. Jeannie Buss is going to give him the retirement, which I don't think he should. But like I said, that's just my thought.
Yeah, I agree. I had the same exact thought. I think out of the three, the one place I don't think he would get it would be LA
Hmm.
because I don't know, you have guys like obviously Gasol, Kobe,
Hmm.
Magic, all having, their jerseys retired there,
Hmm.
and then you have LeBron who kind of came there on his tail end of his career,
Hmm.
won one
The
championship
the
during
the
the COVID year.
the Mickey Mouse chip.
The Mickey Mouse chip. It's not a, full on chip,
Hmm.
however you want to say it, but
Yeah.
it's I don't know, it's kind of dicey in LA,
Yeah.
but I can see them doing it. I agree. I could
Hmm.
see Jeannie wanting to do it, building camaraderie with him
Hmm.
and, having a star go there. But yeah, I can see Miami, I can see Cleveland, of course, but
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. And then another thing with that, have you ever seen a player get a jersey retired in multiple places like that?
I think it's only been Shaq. Didn't he get LA?
And Orlando?
No,
No?
I want to say he maybe got Miami because he
He might have
won
got
one with
Miami.
he won one with Dwayne Wade. Shaq jersey retirements. Let's see.
It's a good little
So
topic.
he was retired by the Orlando Magic, making him the first player in franchise history to have his jersey raised to the
Mm,
rafters.
okay.
Um,
Drafted there. Kind of makes sense.
Drafted there, and then for sure the Lakers
Hmm.
and the Miami Heat. So he has three.
Oh, wow. It's got to be a
Yeah.
record.
Yeah, possibly. I can't see anybody else getting more than three. And like I say, LeBron's on the same pace. You could say LA's going to give it to him because, like I say, Shaq won just one with Dwayne Wade in Miami. But like I say, you know, LeBron won that. I I give it to them. They won it, but everybody calls it the Mickey Mouse Championship because it was COVID.
Yeah.
It wasn't in front of a stadium. It was totally different. But a win's a win. Like I say, I'm not gonna take it away from them, but some people look at it a little differently.
I feel like if you retire him in LA though, you got to retire like Robert Ory
Hmm.
while you're at it.
Yeah.
Derek Fisher.
Nick Van Exel, Derek Fisher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's
You gotta retire.
yeah,
Andrew
Big Shot
Bynum.
Ori.
Bynum.
Bynum.
He
Fuck
won a
it.
few chips.
Bynum.
Sasha
Man, he was fun to
Vujacic,
watch.
you know.
Yeah, yeah, Vucic, yeah. That's another
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, there's some names you could throw up there,
Yeah.
Kwame Brown, why not?
Kwame Brown.
I'm just kidding. I don't think he won jack shit there. Did he
Yeah.
win one with Kobe? I can't remember.
He might have. He
Man, what a
might have.
disappointment.
Yeah.
Chris
Yeah.
Mims.
Hmm.
There's some good.
There's a lot of
Kobe
people.
had some rough years there, man. And he
Yeah.
still made that team efficient and
Yeah.
great.
And
And,
and he
you
never
know,
tried to go build a big three. He didn't,
no.
leave. He stuck with that team,
Yeah, he did.
So
Yep.
yeah, so LeBron needs to do a lot. Uh hope like I say, I consider him one of the greatest players, but not my GOAT. There's two others I consider a GOAT. If he wins
Yep.
four in a row without losing one, maybe I'll put him above Kobe, but still, I still have Jordan as my number one.
Likewise. Likewise.
Yeah.
Curry's up there. Put
Curry.
Curry above LeBron for me. Sorry.
I have Curry a little under. We'll see.
I know.
And,
That's just my bias.
and they just won today, 109, 106. Came
Yeah.
down to the wire.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely. All right, John has sent me over my next take, and it's definitely a topic I was tuning in for a lot today. With the recent Spain and Portugal power outage, it is a look at a cyber war can look like with no access to anything. Yeah, that's definitely the biggest topic thing I'm taking away. Of course, it's going to bring out conspiracy theorists.
hmm
Obviously, we don't shy away from those ourselves. But it definitely is stirring the pot with a lot of that. This
hmm
is a massive outage. I guess they're labeling it atmospheric, right? If I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Don't know how they want to address that solar flare,
hmm
satellite issues. Who knows? But again, that doesn't seem like just reasoning with a lot
hmm
of this. And, a lot of people are kind of commenting on it, saying that this
Yeah.
might be a test run for what could be, like you mentioned, or like we have in this hot topic of, being a possible cyber war.
hmm
And, it's maybe a precursor testing out some advanced tech that, could disrupt
Yeah.
power grids. And it's been a talk of something with Russia Ukraine,
hmm
this has been brought up. And it's just kind of, we're at advanced warfare, literally. We've seen it
hmm
in Call of Duty for years, but
Yes.
I think we've kind of reached the time where it's kind of hitting real life. And
hmm
that's crazy because it's disrupting things like flights,
hmm
travel,
Yeah.
trains. Obviously, you think about hospitals and how they're
hmm
functioning with it all, the deaths, the outcomes that could come from that as well.
hmm
It's a crazy factor in how much we rely on power these days,
Yeah.
and you're totally locked out from what's going on with the rest of the world. Cell phone service is
hmm
another thing that comes into play. So. I did read that I guess a lot of the power was back up in places of Spain, but there's still
hmm
maybe upwards of 50% of the country that still
Yeah.
doesn't have power. That could go on evidently
For
weeks,
days or week.
days,
Yeah. Days to
weeks. I've
weeks.
heard
Yeah.
varying things. It's definitely a scary thing to kind of think about. These are two large countries
hmm
that this is affecting, and how much it's affecting is kind of just outrageous.
Yeah.
Certainly, crazy news to wake up to. I had one other thing that I was going to mention, but I definitely want to hear your thoughts until I kind of gather that thought, John.
Yeah, no, when I saw it, it was crazy because that's the first thing I thought. I was like, okay, this is a cyber attack. I know they're ruling out any type of cyber attack. It's something more environmental, but even hearing that, it's still a little freaky because it's like, man, if it's environmental, if it's the sun, like you mentioned, if it's some sort of solar flares, you know, is that going to happen to us in a week once we orbit around, the Earth orbits and there's a big solar flare that sort of hits when we're, the nearest to it. So it's crazy. And just to see how it affected travel, because I saw trains stop, you can't continue on a train because nobody knows where the next train ahead of you is, if you make the pass at the right time. Same with air travel. I think it makes it a little scary, not being able to travel throughout that area because you don't know if you're going to run into a plane. And we've seen a lot of these close calls that it's crazy. So
Hmm.
I'm curious how we're sort of going to start preparing because I think this is the preview of what it could look like if there is that cyber type warfare between countries, between nations, um, and how to combat it. And then, yeah, we've been, our technology is so amazing. We've done so much since, the 17, 1800s. But now, if something like this happens, it's like everything we created, it's obsolete.
Hmm.
You can't use it at all. Cell phones don't work, lights don't work. You got to go back to nice old candle, that little, thing you put it on, no TV, like I say, no TikTok, no recording. We're gonna have to, I'll send a wire to
Sucks.
you. I'll send a wire to you with a cup, Tim, all the way up north, and that's how
Mhm.
we'll sort of do our podcast just to ourselves talking.
Perfect. Nailed it. Yeah. And we've been taking classes on the side for Morse code.
Yeah,
It's really not obsolete yet,
yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That might use electricity too. Fuck
yeah.
it, but whatever.
Yeah,
But
but it's just crazy to see, and seeing something like that, hopefully it's never gonna happen within our lifetime, our kids' lifetime, but it is where something may head in the future, which is it's scary, it's crazy. We've seen it in video games, movies, but um yeah, we'll see what comes out of this.
yeah, we have so much modern tech these days that it's just kind of crazy to like think about how obsolete everything becomes when you don't have things like
Hmm.
as simple as electricity.
Yeah.
And, you can have as much modern tech as you want, but without that
Hmm.
functionality, you're kind of screwed. It's
Yeah.
like it puts you back to the Stone Ages. What are we gonna do? Throw some rocks somewhere or something? I don't know. Get outside for a bit. But
Yeah.
another thing it brings up is, we've seen, certain warnings that go out. And I did read a comment, and my thought, kind of on this topic was, I read a comment from somebody, I guess, who lives in the UK, and about a month ago, evidently they released some type of emergency outage protocols uh, in case of a mass
Hmm.
outage occurs, and the timing just kind of seems kind of odd,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And it also kind of stirred my mind to think about. I don't know if you remember this, John, but maybe about like a year and a half ago, New York had a state of emergency warning about
Mm-hmm.
a nuclear attack.
Yeah.
And it was all kind of like when, the Russia-Ukraine conflict was,
Yeah.
really heavy. Obviously, it's still ongoing, unfortunately. But, just the talks of nukes obviously is a big deal,
Hmm.
just regarding all of that. So the timing of that is odd.
Yeah.
Luckily, nothing obviously happened, but it gets your mind thinking certain ways. Like, with this outage, for
Hmm.
example, it's like, all right, we don't necessarily have a state of emergency protocol, but we're not immune to them here in California. If an earthquake hits, or
Hmm.
there's excessive heat, or
Yeah.
crazy storms, but you know you just got to think about those situations. It makes me want to stockpile water, canned food, things like that, because you
Yeah.
never know. I mean, like this news of two huge countries having
Hmm.
outages came out of left field,
Yeah.
and it halts everything. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It halts everything, and you like you said, technology just runs our lives, runs our world. Because I remember when we had the fires here in Ventura County, like we lost power at my office building and nobody could go in because everybody has a key fob. So it's like
Oh,
it runs off electricity, so nobody could get in. So it's like, a few of us have the keys. So it's like we had to go be there, open it up, there
damn
was
it.
no Wi-Fi there, stuff like that. So it's sort of like, what are we really gonna do if something like that happens? I think this is sort of that time to sort of start thinking, okay, what are our steps? What are we going to prepare for? Like you mentioned, we're prepared for earthquakes, we're prepared for fires. We know what we need to do. We know what we need to take to leave.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think we've ever thought about like, what are we going to do if there's that cyber war and we lose all power, all electricity? Like, what do we take? Do we have candles, flashlights, batteries? Like you say, canned goods because nothing's going to work. So it's sort of like that. You could sort of say like almost like a doomsday type plan. You got to prep for it
Mhm.
because who knows what else is going to come from a cyber attack.
Right. Yeah. Caught off guard with other attacks that could occur.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know, build your bunker, I
Yeah.
think. Right. Yeah. Find
Yeah.
that, hidden spot,
Yeah.
and just kind of have a go-to, because you never really know. And I actually, I remember a couple years back, just, when talks of war, are
Hmm.
reigniting and stuff like that. I had a conversation that was pretty in depth with Rob, not Kimberly's Rob,
Hmm.
who we've had on the show. And, we're just kind of talking about like go-to points of,
Hmm.
say so and so attacks us like, where are you going? What are you gonna do? And we just kind of laid it out there. If
Yeah.
this happens, we got to come up with a plan and kind of stick together, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I think it's things that, although scary, I think are just relevant. Yeah, and I
Hmm.
think it's important to think about.
Yeah. Plan ahead.
And we got to think about that, John. Mondays we got to keep doing this. So,
Uh,
we got to
well,
stick together and,
okay. Gotta
you
find
know,
a way to connect if we're not too
get a
close. How do
great
we?
camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
S-
and I think it's a conversation everybody has with their buddies, their friends, with all the
Yep.
video games we play. Because I think a lot of us play video games, all the TV shows. Because I think with the guys, there were times we were just hanging out at night, drinking, having fun before when we were younger, and we'd always come up with plans for zombie apocalypse.
Yeah,
Where
it's a
are we
fun
gonna
one.
go? If a zombie apocalypse happened, we're gonna all go here. This is our go-to place. We're gonna take
Mhm.
XYZ, and then we're gonna build a little town, support each other, stuff like that, and like I say, it's fun to think about, but now I think as getting older, some of us with families, you sort of are in the mindset of like, shit, I gotta really think about this because I got people to protect. I gotta, do a lot of stuff. So, like I say that what's happening in Spain and Portugal, hopefully everything works out well. Nobody really gets injured. Nothing bad happens, but it's sort of that reality of this could happen and what are we gonna do?
Yep. Yeah. It's,
Hmm.
it's worthwhile thinking about it. Even the
Yeah.
furthest fetched things like a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
You gotta have that mindset at times and
Hmm.
kind of figure it out from there.
Yeah.
Crazy. Crazy.
Yeah.
Hopefully most of the power's up
Soon.
overseas.
Yeah. No,
Hopefully.
for sure. So yeah. Yeah. Our thoughts go out to everybody there that has no power. Hopefully you guys are finding ways to get through it. Hopefully you're listening to this show once you guys get power back. Um, but yeah, those are our banter takes. Like I said, we're gonna roll with these takes. We're gonna discuss them. We'll see what more news comes out of them. Um, but we'll head to our next topic, and that's our NFL draft recap. So NFL draft was this past week, and a lot of names moving. We'll talk a little bit about our teams, what they did. I think unanimously before, we had our little draft preview last episode when we were in person. I think we both had Cam Ward going number one, Tennessee. Writing was on the wall. He was shouting it in Fortnite, whatever game it was. Um, but the biggest surprise for me, or one of the biggest surprises for me, Shadur Sanders' fall. And I think we heard the rumblings prior to this that he was going to drop a little bit. But I'm going to say the surprise to me is dropping to the fifth round. I couldn't believe it. So, what are your thoughts with Sanders, fifth round?
Yeah, we kind of talked about how, his draft stock was kind of halting. We got a lot of feedback on that video this past week, and maybe some of it was, I guess, his
Mm-hmm.
nonchalant kind of style in a lot of these interviews with the teams
Mm-hmm.
during the drafting process, kind of turned teams away. I've read articles that, Dion's involvement with his
Mm-hmm.
son and him wanting to call certain shots, is another topic that has kind of come up, and nobody just wants to deal with that.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it, kind of all comes back to, you know, does is Shadir even that good?
Mm-hmm.
Because, obviously I think he's talented, but at the same time, if he was really, really good but had this baggage on top of it, he would have been picked round one or two, without a doubt. If
Mm-hmm.
if he had the talent, teams would take that risk if he
Yeah.
had enough of that talent. But clearly, there was enough negative science between whether it's maybe a
Mm-hmm.
workout or just the draft process that teams
Mm-hmm.
are willing to pass on him time and time again, draft people like Dylan Gabriel over
Yeah.
him, Show over him,
Mm-hmm.
or Schaff, whatever his
Shaw. Yeah.
Shaw. It goes on and on. Jackson Dart obviously is
Mm-hmm.
another one that we kind of were talking about his draft stock climbing,
Mm-hmm.
but again, I think it was just very surprising to see him fall this far.
Hmm.
And yeah, you can speculate about a lot of things with it. I've even there's been resurfaced tweets from Dion saying if he went to the Cleveland Browns that, he should pull an Eli Manning. He's not even given that,
No.
kind of, ability to do something like that,
Yeah.
with where he was drafted. So crazy. And, on top of it, we'll get more into it, I'm sure. But yeah, Cleveland, I don't know what they're doing. But oh, what are your thoughts on this, Sean?
Yeah, I'm surprised. Like I pictured him dropping out of the first round. I thought he was going to get picked in the second. I thought there was going to be a team that was going to take him because he did show
Hmm.
a lot of promise while he was at Colorado. He
Hmm.
he did show some flashes of being good, not great. I would say not that star player, but someone who, if he developed, could become a great quarterback. So, but dropping to the fifth, like you mentioned, a lot of other QBs going before him that I didn't think were gonna go before him. Dylan Gabriel, I think Jalen Milrow, with his hands growing, went, above him
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
right.
So it's crazy to see and why it happened. I'm curious to just get more info with the coming weeks. I'm hearing a lot of people. I think it was talked about at the draft. I saw some other people talking about it today. Nobody knows what these kids are going to do, how great they're going to be and nobody can really evaluate a quarterback if they're going to be great or not. Which I somewhat agree with. We don't know who's going to be a great quarterback or not. It's going to depend on the team you go, the coaching, that player's confidence. There's a lot of factors that you can't get. Um, but at the same time, they're right on a lot of things. A lot of these draft experts, they know what they got to look for. They know some of these telltale signs of who's good or not, and it's a little different than Moneyball, where you're trying to buy runs, buy hits. You have to buy that confidence and the confidence. Someone could be really confident in an interview and just once they do the work, bad. Jamarcus Russell,
Oh,
good example.
yeah.
Great
A good one.
college career, great confidence. I think going into the draft, he seemed so confident in himself, and then something happened and he just didn't do well.
Yep.
So it's something people you're gonna gamble on it, and I think what Sanders has to do is gamble on himself, show why these teams made the mistake of not passing on him, and I hope the kid does well, but I'm very curious, and like you mentioned, what was Cleveland doing? Why draft Dylan Gabriel and then Sanders when you just picked up a QB? You could have passed and picked up a different positional player because you need someone. You signed Joe Flacco during the offseason. Kenny Pickett, I think, is
Yep.
Cleveland as well. So
They have
that's
five
that
QBs.
they got five QBs. That's a lot of competition, and it's
Yep.
like, what are you guys really gonna be doing? Why do you have that much? Because you're not gonna hold five QBs for a whole season, and like I say, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, you put them on the practice squad, someone's going to pick them up, depending on
Yeah, yeah.
how the offseason goes. Joe Flacco, I know Shedeur Sanders, Dion were making fun of him during the draft, that he's as old as Dion, but Joe Flacco showed that he still has a lot in him. So
Yeah.
don't be putting Flacco down. I'm a fan of him. He brought me a Super Bowl. So, um,
Yeah.
but that I think that's just the biggest news for me. The craziest thing that he just fell to the fifth round when I truly thought he was going to fall, but to the second, maybe the third, not the fifth.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, third was probably the latest that
Yeah,
I would have envisioned him being added. I did kind of have a feeling that Jackson Dart was gonna,
yeah,
you know, lack of a better word, dart above him, and he did. But yeah, Milrow and Gabriel
Hmm.
and Show all going before was kind of wild.
Yeah.
And with this Cleveland Brown situation, I want to ask you, John,
Hmm.
if say you're head coach, you could choose your lineup here. Who's starting? Who's your second? Who's your third? And who's going to practice squad with those QBs?
Just based off what I know without seeing how they do in training camp.
Correct. As of right now, how would you kind of format that? And or you could even say
Mhm.
who competes for what role as
Yeah.
well. And then, exclude Deshaun because I don't think he's going to play this year.
No, yeah. Um, I'd have Joe Flacco as my starter, day one starter, just because of the experience, what he did with Indianapolis when Anthony Richards was down. He held that team up. He's not the best QB, but I have him as my starter. Second string, it would be. I'm not the biggest Kenny Pickett fan, honestly.
Hmm.
He got a Super Bowl. He got a Super Bowl right with the Eagles by
He did.
riding the
Yep.
bench.
Backup.
Yeah,
Yep. He played a few
but hey,
snaps.
kudos. And in the Super Bowl too, he played a
Yep.
few snaps, I think, at the
He
end.
did. Hmm.
Um, but I would put Dylan Gabriel as my number two, and I think you know me. I've been a Dylan Gabriel fan this past year.
Yeah.
I've been an Oregon fan. Like him, I think he's a great player. I don't think he's a star. I think in a good situation, he he's a system quarterback, and I like to use
Hmm.
that word a lot, he's a Brock Purdy. I could see him being in that right and good system. Um, and then it's a battle between Shadir and Kenny Pickett for that third spot. Um,
Hmm.
where it, if it were me, I'd keep Sanders.
Yep.
But then it's sort of like we wasted money on Kenny Pickett because you got to pay him out.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I have a very similar thought. I think you kind of let Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco duel for the starter spot. I too kind of think Joe Flacco would win out on that.
Mhm.
I'm not I out of college, I didn't think Kenny Pickett was going to amount to
Yeah.
much. I think there was just a lot more hype than anything
Hmm.
else there. And I think that you use Kenny Pickett for as trade bait,
Hmm.
get a pick for the following season, maybe trade him for another need
Yeah.
and get it to a QB needing or
Yeah.
team or whatever. And then I too actually would go Dylan Gabriel. They drafted him above Sanders, but I think Gabriel is an accurate quarterback.
Hmm.
I think that obviously he has, big game
Hmm.
and has been with a number of programs, and that comes with experience.
Hmm.
And I think he, quite frankly, is probably more experienced than what Sanders is currently.
Yeah.
And I think Sanders you put at the three, let him develop a little bit more. But
Hmm.
Sanders isn't a guy that deserves to be on the practice squad. You invested in him, you drafted
Hmm.
him. You got to put him one, two, or three
Hmm.
and let him learn and
Hmm.
kind of develop into something in the future. But yeah, I think Kenny Pickett's the guy that you kind of use as trade bait. But
Hmm.
kind of crazy. I don't know what they're doing. They didn't seem all too enthused with drafting Sanders either. I think that they know what they're getting some themselves into,
Yeah.
and a lot of people, quite frankly, are comparing Shadir to Bronny. They're calling him the Bronny of the NFL. So
Yeah.
I don't even know if you can really say that anymore based off of
Yeah.
where Sanders was picked. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I say, I saw some good in Sanders this year. I could
Yeah,
see where he does well. I think it needs to be in a good system, good team. Honestly, don't think it's the Browns. That's why I don't know what the Browns did.
yeah.
Browns needed to invest in a wide receiver because that's where they're struggling. I like the running back pickup. I think that's going to be a good one. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, Sanders. I hope Dion stays away from it. Um, I think the Browns are doing what you're saying. They're using someone as trade bait. Who it's gonna be? Could be Kenny Pickett. It could be Dylan Gabriel. you know,
Hmm.
because they need other weapons and they can't hold all these quarterbacks. Um, I don't think it'll be Deshaun Watson, even though he's injured. I don't think anybody wants to touch that with a 10-foot pole, that player.
Nope.
So we'll see. I truly thought when he was dropping, I thought he was going to go to Dallas. I think
Yeah.
that would have been a good situation. Um, you know, uh, they know him there. They know his dad. Good wide receivers, decent running back. O-line struggling, but um, good place to learn from Dak Prescott, who sort of was a type of, Shedeur Sanders type player, late draft pick, becoming. You could say he's a star, not the best star, but a good star. He's always up there.
Mhm.
So that's my thought. But like I said, Sanders, I wish him the best. I hope he does well. I know there's a lot of people that are surprised, and feel like these NFL experts, these teams are sort of shadow banning him for some reason or not, like,
Mhm.
YouTube and Bezos is doing with us. But not much more about that. But it's but I still think the experts know something we don't know. Because like I say, they've been
Mhm.
doing this for years. You got to look at it in baseball. Moneyball piece. I touched on it a little bit. It works, but there's still a lot more to it that these experts that watch baseball and recruit know that normal people like us don't know.
Yeah, definitely. We can only go off of the feedback, and a lot of that feedback was Shadir had terrible interviews,
Yeah.
and he just didn't seem like think a lot of people are just saying downright he was just unprofessional. So, again, take it for what you will, but obviously, his draft stock fell a ton. Another team I was kind of thinking about was the Oakland, or not Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders, and they had back-to-back picks at the end of the third round. I was like, oh, here's a time
Hmm.
where they
Yeah.
could go with Shadir. Obviously, Shadir hinted at, I feel like, at certain things with the Raiders, and it was kind of a destination spot
Hmm.
for him. And yeah, another thing I saw too, John, was the possibility that Travis Hunter and Shadir could have ended up on the Browns, but the
Hmm.
Browns traded back. And that's another thing that we can kind of get into is just the trades of the first round, and that was a big one. We
Yeah.
jokingly talked about Balky's dumbass,
Hmm.
and how he overpaid for a quarterback there. But Jacksonville, we're what's in the water there? It kind of seemed like they got fleeced with this trade. They went up,
Hmm.
got a guy like Travis Hunter, who could be a generational talent, or he could just be a average both
Hmm.
sides of the ball kind of guy. We don't really
Yeah.
know. But yeah, want to know your thoughts there, John, of that trade and what Jacksonville's doing.
I don't know what Jacksonville's doing. Uh I like I said, I think Travis Hunter could be a star player depending on what side of the ball he decides to focus on the most. What the team's gonna do, I have no idea. Um, it, it's crazy, but overall, I think they just gave up too much to move up because I think they gave up their pick. I think next year's number, I think they gave up next year's number one as well, or two, in 2 years, and
Mhm.
the way they still have Trevor Lawrence. They didn't address their running back situation. Um, they have two of the greatest young wide receivers with Brian Thomas and possibly Travis Hunter. Uh, but I still think the QB position is it's what needs to be fixed. If Trevor Lawrence can't get that confidence or can't go to that Clemson Lawrence type game, um, so I just think they made a mistake. You know, great for them, but I don't know. And for me, did you see their press conference, Tim, with James
With the
Gladstone?
rehearsed speech,
Yeah,
yeah, it seemed very rehearsed.
it seemed very
Yeah.
rehearsed, and it was very just odd. And
Hmm.
their press conferences since the hiring of their head coach, I'm just like,
Duval.
what is going on in Jacksonville? What really is in that water? Because, at first I thought it was just a coach, Gladstone looks like a 12-year-old, looks like he's
Hmm.
probably still in high school. Um, and then I just saw it, and I like the whole time I was watching the press conference introducing Travis Hunter. I was like, what is this guy on? He must be on some good stuff down there in
Yeah.
Jacksonville,
Yep.
because this guy, I don't know. It cracked me up. They're doing something interesting in Jacksonville. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah. If there was a list of all-time socially awkward teams, I think they'd be at the top.
Oh yeah,
Like there's no
even with
doubt.
their owner, even their
Even
owner,
with the owner. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously the main thing that he's got going is that stash, which is always on point.
yeah,
And then
it's a
obviously
nice
the
sesh.
money too. He's got a good yacht too.
Yeah.
But a phenomenal yacht, I should say. But overall, yeah, I don't know what they're doing. Did you see
Mhm.
also where I think it was maybe the assistant GM, maybe the VP of the team, and the way Travis Hunter kind of like
Oh
snatched
yeah,
the jersey out of his hand? That was awkward. That was
that
just real
that
weird.
that was very awkward, and that's sort of where I'm like, how? And like I said, nothing against Travis Hunter, because the one thing I have to remember, these players are still kids. Some of them are still kids. They're still very immature.
Yep.
They don't really know what to do or how to act. But I'm like, that's just not a good look, because it makes you look like an immature kid. And I'm just like, dude, he shouldn't have done that, because people are going to talk about it. It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Whatever player would have done something like that, it's going to be news. It's something people are going to remember if you don't do well. They're going to call you immature. They're going to call. And I'm just like, man, that's not how you handle yourself as a professional, even though you're one of the best, because you were drafted number two.
Yeah, for sure. And we kind of talked about it last week, John. You posed the question with, you know, can he go with both sides? Do we think
Mhm.
that he's going to go in that direction? I'm very enticed to see how he's utilized there. Obviously, the
Mhm.
thought is that he's going to obviously play both sides of the ball. But we certainly received some comments that said, he'll cook both sides, but then we also
Yeah.
received others that said not so fast.
Hmm.
There's a lot more to it. He's going to get gassed out. It's a different game in the NFL. There's a lot
Yeah.
more to read. And then another thing that we didn't talk about that, really came to mind after we kind of discussed that topic, John, was just learning the playbook on both sides of the
Hmm.
ball
Yeah.
is an immense
It's gonna
immense
be a
amount of
lot.
time. And you think there's corner meetings, then
Hmm.
there's wide receiver meetings. Those are
Hmm.
two totally separate, intense meetings that you have to key in on a lot. So I don't know. There's a whole lot to it with modern NFL
Yeah.
that I just don't know how it'll totally be utilized, but I'm definitely curious to see. But again, with the way that the management of this team is going, uh, do they just like let them freelance it and say, "Fuck it, get out there, do your best"? Like,
They could be. What I picture is they're gonna give him half of the offensive plays, half of the defensive plays that they want him to play, whatever package
hmm.
that they see on the offense, on the defense, what downs, and they're going to have him learn both sides of the ball. So I don't think he's going to learn all of the offense that he needs to know, all of the defense. They're going to limit him to what routes and stuff they want from him. But yeah, like I said, it's a lot unless Travis Hunter really is a genius and he could learn it all. Two playbooks, know every single play. We'll see. But yeah, I agree with a lot of the commenters that I don't think it'll last for too long, and I just don't think it could last. I don't think he'll have the battery, the energy to go too long for a whole season. And if he tries to push it, it's either he's gonna risk injury or he's gonna, fizzle out of the star player a lot quicker than normal star players do. So
Yep.
we'll see. Yeah, we talked about that last week. But I'm curious. Like I say, just like with Shadir, I hope Travis Hunter does well because it'd be amazing to see a two-way player have a great NFL pro career.
Definitely. Yeah, in with that trade overall with Jacksonville, obviously they end up with Travis Hunter. Besides that, kind of an underwhelming draft for them.
Hmm.
For a new set of head coach and GM coming in, they're trying to make a splash off of one player. So imagine
Hmm.
if he doesn't pan out,
Yeah.
they're kind of screwed off the bat.
You,
Like,
you, do you think if he doesn't pan out, they're out? You think
oh, easy.
Gladstone? You think
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
But you got to think about Shad Khan too, though. He's overly loyal with like
yeah.
dumbasses like Balky. So, how long's the leash? You
But
know?
maybe he learned from Balky, like I can't be that loyal. Like
Yeah.
if they screw up something and it's talked about and it doesn't show on paper, I gotta
Yeah.
make a move sooner before it's too late and they mess up the organization worse and it's harder to repair because, like I say, they lost the first rounder next year. So it's like if you do bad, you gotta figure out what you need to do to make that team great or tank for the number one pick. And hey, maybe they should tank because rumor has it Archie Manning isn't coming out next year. He's going to stay another 2 years in Texas. So,
Wow.
hey, you lose your pick next year. Archie Manning's not there. You tank the following year. Archie Manning, you know,
Yeah.
the next top QB. That could be the way to
He's out
go.
there.
You heard it here first, Shao Kahn. You need someone higher banter on the rocks to be your GMs.
Yeah. Let us come in there. Sorry, we talk shit. We'll be accepting of everything that,
Yeah.
is there. Become big Jaguar fans.
Yes.
And yeah, speaking of Arch Manning,
Mhm.
Manning's with New York Giants. I'm gonna say it, John. I think they did a bit better this week with or this year
Yeah.
altogether with this draft. I
Mhm.
think the Giants pulled something together,
Mhm.
and I think that leash is slightly extended, and they have a chance to turn this around a
Yeah.
bit there in New York.
Yeah. I think the only question is going to be Jackson Dart for me.
Uh-huh.
I like it, but I'm also just he went up on the draft boards, but I don't know if he's the guy. But like I
Hmm.
say, if he could be that system QB, they they bolstered their defense. I think they bolstered their offensive line as well a bit to protect.
Yep.
They have a young, running back. Their wide receivers, Malik Neighbors, one of the top receivers. Um,
Yep.
it could be a good move, but I'm curious to see what Jackson Dart does. But I think the Giants did well. Yes, the leashes are a little looser. They're not on the bubble, but I think if it doesn't go well halfway through the season, that they're going to be back on the hot seat.
For sure. Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I think that they're forever tarnished with what Saquon did with Philly this year.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any coming back from that at all unless they win like two consecutive Super Bowls in the next 3 years,
Yeah.
which, would be super far-fetched. But I do think, and from what I've heard, Jackson Dart is being set up in a great
Mhm.
situation there
Yeah.
with their head coach to be further developed. And, that was kind of just the guy that they wanted to pair up with Dable.
Hmm.
So I evidently Dable's a bit of a QB guru over there.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, this might be the good destination that Jackson needed. Get his,
Hmm.
everything kind of going, and I guess he'll be behind. I guess third string is my assumption with
Hmm.
Russell Wilson, right, and then also Jameis Winston. So
Yeah.
all those fills, you have two gems right above them.
Yeah.
At least they're a veteran presence,
Hmm.
and evidently Jackson wanted to pair up with a guy like Jameis for his
Yeah.
work ethic and his
Hmm.
personality, I'm sure, and kind of learn from him. And
Hmm.
good consolation is if you get a receptive and willing to coach kind of Russell
Yeah.
Wilson, that could be a huge benefit too, because the
Yeah.
Super Bowl experience is there. He knows how to win. He's a competitor,
Hmm.
and that could be a good
Yeah.
little opportunity also. So Maybe
Yeah.
some redemption tour for them as well.
Yeah, it could be. So we'll see what happens with the Giants, and then we'll go to our teams, Tim. Your 49ers, how do you feel about your draft? Round one, going with the edge, you know. Um,
Yeah, you can definitely get the sense the defense is back with Saleh. It seemed like that just really dominated our
mhm.
draft was defense, defense, defense.
Yeah.
It kind of left us vulnerable still at offensive line, and I'm
Mhm.
worried about that because is this going to be another year of Brock getting killed? And hey, maybe it's all in their thought of
Mhm.
we don't want to pay this guy top tier money. So if
Maybe.
we make him look a bit bad with the battle line, maybe and maybe that's it. But of course, 49ers, we're known for our defense.
Hmm.
Our first overall pick of Michael Williams, I am so stoked on that pick. I
Hmm.
think Michael is going to be incredible.
Hmm.
Any if you get anybody from Georgia that's D line or linebacker,
Hmm.
you have an absolute
Yeah.
unit. He's 6'5", 260, just an absolute machine. I saw his introductions. He seems super hyped to be there.
Yeah.
And I love that. And it's just, I have a feeling he's going to really, really gel with that defense and team
Hmm.
overall. And then to put him opposite of Bosa is going
Yeah.
to be a scary punch that we
Yeah.
need. So really excited about that. Our second pick with Alfred Collins, amazing.
Yeah.
I love that pick as well. Matthew McConaughey, I think, sent out a tweet at the Niners saying, sweats early and sweats late. So
Yeah.
he's going to be start to finish kind of guy.
Hmm.
He's going to give you absolutely everything. I think that he's a big boy. He's going to be there. He's
Hmm.
going to, be on the interior defensive line. I love that. Nick Martin from Oklahoma State saw a
Yeah.
ton of highlights on him. I think he's going to be absolute beast. He's all over the field in those highlights. Um, Upton Stout, listening to local radio as I usually do.
Yeah.
They replayed his draft call with Shanahan and Lynch,
Hmm.
and he just repeatedly was saying, "Let's go, coach! Let's go, coach!" It just already fired up. So
Yeah.
you just know that's going to be a good pick. And I haven't heard much about Upton Stout,
Hmm.
but hell of a football name if you ask me. And we got him at corner, which was another need that we needed to
Hmm.
fill. CJ West, defensive tackle, another good interior defensive lineman. We did go wide receiver with Jordan Watkins.
Hmm.
We'll see how it pans out. It kind of seems like, kind of on the shorter side, could be a good speed receiver. We'll see. Of course, we got to just sneak in one type of running back, Jordan James. Uh, you
Which
know,
he isn't that bad. Like he
no,
could be
Oregon.
a consistent running back for you guys.
Absolutely. And it maybe he fills the need in case, God forbid, CMC.
Hmm.
We need him to play 12 games this year
Yeah.
because I want to see that guy eat his shoe. But obviously he's not immune to injuries. Could be a good
Yeah.
fill in with Garendo. Obviously Mason, hit the road this past
Hmm.
offseason. So that could be a good one. We went safety as well. And then we did draft a QB, the Indiana QB, who Indiana had a great year overall. So,
Hmm.
good late round grab there. Then, seventh round, what do you know? We finally go offensive guard. You draft out of a school like Iowa. I feel like
Yeah.
Iowa is just known for just big linemen, tight
Yeah.
ends.
Tight ends.
So,
Hmm.
probably will gel well with Kittle over here.
Hmm.
And then we finish off with another Montana wide receiver,
Hmm.
which, to be honest with you, I wish we would have looked a little bit more local, John, and gone with a guy like Nick Nash.
Nick Nash. Yeah.
Big fan of his. Went to San
Hmm.
Jose State. Led the nation, I think, in receiving this
Hmm.
past year. So he was picked up UDFA with Atlanta. I have a feeling he's going to be really good. But again,
Hmm.
I think overall on a defensive side of things, we had a phenomenal draft.
You guys did.
Uh, Offensive line, I'm worried about. But if we maybe defense wins championships
Hmm.
mentality with Salah back,
Hmm.
and I just think because Salah's back, that's why we went this direction. To be honest
Hmm.
with you, I don't mind it. to be honest.
Yeah.
I just think we drafted well, and I'm really stoked on that. So we'll see. The secondary probably needs a little bit of work too. I think Mustafa's going to be out. I think he
Hmm.
re-injured, or no, he's still coming back from his ACL injury.
Hmm.
But overall, yeah, I'm okay. What
Nice.
do you think with our draft?
I think it was good. Like I say, you guys went defensive heavy, which it's not surprising. You guys are going to be
Mhm.
one of the top defenses again this year, but offensive, I think that's where you guys needed the help. Like I say, and like you said, what? Why not go offensive tackle? Why not go receiver help, running back help in the first few rounds? Waiting till what was it, the fifth that they picked up finally an offensive line, or fourth, late fourth,
Offensive line we didn't do
or
until the seventh.
well, but like an offensive player. I think your wide receiver
Oh yeah,
went
yeah,
fifth,
yeah. Sorry, wide receiver Jordan Watkins, fourth round.
fourth round. So it's like what's going on in San Francisco? In my thought is it Purdy? Like, are they going to use Purdy for some draft capital, some players, to help that
Yeah.
offensive line? Because you guys have some backups, and you guys might go with that sixth round Indiana quarterback as your next Brock Purdy,
Yeah.
hoping you guys hit another gem. So we'll see. I think if you guys would have drafted wide receiver, I would have liked to see the Ohio State Emeka. He would have been great for you
Oh
guys.
yeah.
Solid route
Hmm.
runner, solid
Yep.
hands, experience.
I heard he
Next
likes
to
to block, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, as well.
Hmm.
Like he'll
Yeah.
do multiple things.
Yeah. Physical player, so he would have been good. But overall, I think you guys had a great draft. Like I said, we'll see what happens with the offense. I think the big question mark, we talked about it, Brock Purdy. What are
Yep.
you guys going to pay him? What's the next steps? Like Puka said, if you guys pay him 50 million, your window may be closed. If you guys could get him at a discount, 30 to 20, you guys have a lot of room to do a lot.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And I just, like I said last week, that's exactly where we need to be.
Hmm.
He's 25, 30 mil.
Yeah.
Then we can afford a lot of, other assets.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the Niners. Obviously,
Mhm.
some needs there, but defense is going to look really, really good this year. But your Ravens, Sean, got a lot of attention, and I feel like for all the right reasons.
Mhm.
I think you guys drafted phenomenally well, starting with Green in late first round, right?
Uh, Second round.
Second round,
Yeah. So
still
yeah, no. First round we got Malachi Starks, so safety. Turn him up
gotcha.
with Kyle Hamilton. We're gonna have one of the best defensive back teams in the league.
Malachi's legit.
Um, yeah, and like I said, we struggled with the passing game, so this is gonna help us having that safety. Can he be the Ed Reed type of safety? Hopefully, that's what I always want to see, another Ed Reed coming to the team. But yeah, then second round, Mike Green, the edge out of Marshall. I think that was a great pickup too. Like I say, our defense, where I think next to you, we're up there. At like two or three, defensive teams. So I
Definitely.
think us continuing to build that. Emery Jones, our offensive tackle, I like that pick a lot. Like I say, we need that offensive support, continuing to protect Lamar Jackson. Uh, Solid player, started every single game pretty much his college career. That's a player you guys could have picked up, earlier on too, so that could have
You're right.
helped a lot, you know. And then we had Teddy Buchanan, linebacker, like I say, another linebacker. Then Carson Vincent, offensive tackle, Alabama A&M, another cornerback, Coney. Uh, are the one pick that I'm surprised and sort of is a future, Tyler Loop, kicker.
Yes, I was gonna ask.
Arizona. Seeing
Yeah,
that, I'm just like, it must be the end of Justin Tucker, or we're really close to it. Because
yeah,
why draft a kicker? We've seen it from the past. When you draft a kicker, doesn't work well. Um, but this guy, from what I've seen, pretty solid kicker. Uh, But like I say, I'm curious to see what happens with Justin Tucker. I'm curious if we're just gonna release him. We're gonna try to trade him because someone's gonna, depending on what happens with his allegations, someone may want to pick him up. Someone may give us something. But seeing us draft a kicker, I was like, oh, this is the end of JT for us. Um, but yeah, and then we picked up Wester, the Colorado wide receiver, some more tackles, cornerback. So overall, I've always liked how Eric Costa, the team drafts. I feel like we always have some great players that become, they're not day one starters, but after a year or two, they make it into that starting rotation, on defense and offense. So um, happy about it. I was watching it and I kept on crossing my fingers that Emeka dropped to 27 because I heard he could have dropped a little bit because if he would have dropped, I would have. That's the one wide receiver I wanted for the Ravens. I think I mentioned it.
Yep.
I think that's the wide receiver the Chargers should have picked up, but he didn't drop that far. Got close, but I think he got picked up. I think one or two picks before that, or
Hmm.
two picks before that.
Number 19 with
I
Tampa.
th- yeah, yeah, and the Chargers for 22. I think that would have been the
Yep.
best pick for the Chargers, if he would have fallen. So overall, great draft. I think our defense is set. Our offense has been good. Like I said, we have Mark Andrews. That might be some trade for more assets that we're going to pick up. But overall,
Hmm.
I think we are ready to compete for the Super Bowl this year because I think our window, we talked about it a bit. If the Ravens window was closed, um, I didn't think it was fully closed. I think it depended a lot on the offseason. I think after this, we're still there. We still have
Hmm.
the opportunity to win it. Because the Bills did okay. I think we can still compete with the Bills. Casey, I think Casey's just getting old, so I don't think they're going to be in it too much longer. So it's our chance to take this the AFC and win one before these young teams, these young players step up.
Definitely. Yeah. No, and this fills the defensive void. I feel like
Mhm.
that's needed with Baltimore.
Yeah.
Offense, there's fewer question marks
Hmm.
than what was on defense this past year, and I feel like you guys capitalized with those
Yeah.
first two picks. So you need somebody to really help out with T. Higgins and Jamar
Hmm.
Chase
Yeah.
because man, they cooked this year against
Oh yeah,
Baltimore. So,
they did.
uh, yeah, I think that's a promising promising
Hmm.
draft. I think you guys did great. Took
Yeah.
advantage of the spots you guys were at.
Hmm.
Obviously, you guys were later picks, and yeah, I hope it's not a Jake Moody scenario with your pick,
I
but at
hope
least
so.
you guys didn't. At least it was a sixth round pick and not a
Yeah.
third.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, overall, I think besides obviously your great picks to start off, you guys filled the needs there. The other big news is just what happens with Justin Tucker now,
Hmm.
and I think the writing's kind of on the wall that
Hmm.
I think there's just too many allegations, and
Yeah.
I think
There's just too much that
it's
it's not
time.
going to go away that easily, and it's just best cut the ties. Do almost what that one puncher Ariza did, with his
Yeah,
allegations. You have
there
to
you
get
go.
dropped. Stay consistent, stay working out, and once everything comes to light, if it's all false, well, a team's going to pick you up. So,
Yeah, for sure. Then maybe he'll go back to his what is it, high 80s, low 90s percentage field
mhm,
goals that he was making.
yeah.
So maybe he'll go back to that.
Hmm. Yeah, so we'll see. But yeah. And then draft, I'm just gonna give myself kudos. Calling Ashton Genty. I think I've been calling it for weeks to the
Hey,
Raiders. I'm excited. I'm excited for the Raiders with that pick. I think he's perfect for the Raiders. With that team, I think Raiders still need a lot of help with wide receiver, but after that, I think they're a solid team. I'm not gonna take them as my hot take for the NFL this year. I still want to see a bit before I figure out what my hot take for the entire NFL season will be.
For sure. Yeah, it's that was a great call on Ashton Genty. Obviously, we kind of had him. We threw out a few different teams, but you definitely made it loud and clear that your Ashton Genty was going to go to Vegas, and I
Mhm,
think that was a phenomenal pick. And I really like the wide receiver that they took in the second round as
mhm,
well. Just speaking of
mhm.
Las Vegas, Jack Betch.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that there's a lot of talent there. His background story, you know, really tough. I think his brother
Mhm.
was Tiger was a victim of the tragedy over in New Orleans. So
New
I
Orleans,
really
yeah.
hope for a phenomenal career for him. And
Yeah.
there's a lot to root for with him altogether.
Mhm,
I just wish him nothing but the best. And they they just drafted really well too.
mhm,
They Deontay Thornton with the wide receiver they got out of Tennessee. I think he's an absolute stud.
mhm,
They went QB as well.
mhm.
They didn't they take did they sign so they took the North Dakota State quarterback Cam Miller.
Yeah.
But didn't they sign another one?
Uh,
I believe was it South Dakota or Montana? Because they went up against each other in a bowl game, and I think they took both, if I'm not mistaken. One, Cam Miller was drafted, but I want to say there was a free agent signing after
yeah.
that.
Let's see. They got Carter Bradley, Cam Miller, and Haj Malik Williams. That's the
Hmm.
depth chart.
Okay.
Carter Bradley. Yeah.
Maybe I saw an article on it. Maybe it was
Yeah.
recent news. I'm not too sure. But anyways, they drafted well. Could be
Mhm,
good. Um, yeah. Besides that, the hottest topic was certainly the Dion stuff, or the
mhm.
sorry, Dion Shadir, and Shiloh getting picked up by Tampa as well.
Mhm.
One other fun fact here, John, about
Yeah.
Tampa. So Tampa took the wide receiver out of Oregon. I believe he's practically a brother to Bo Nix.
Okay.
Um, God, what's his name? Tampa Bay. Anyways, so they took him, but then they also signed the very large human being lineman
Oh
from
yeah.
Florida. So
Yeah.
they now have, I guess, the light
The lightest and the
player in the league,
heaviest.
and then the heaviest. And I guess what separates them is like 320 pounds.
Damn.
So it's a big difference. Wish them both nothing but the best, but I think that's a pretty fun fact to
Yeah.
take away from this draft is
Yeah.
you're going both ends there.
Oh no, yeah, you go both ends and they're gonna have a big defensive line because they
Oh
got
yeah.
Vita Veda.
Oh, he's such
Uh,
a beast.
and he's a
Love that
big
guy.
dude too. So if they get this guy to be able to develop and plug up that middle, nobody's running down the middle on them.
Oh no. No, and then Vita Vea not wearing gloves
Yeah.
during games. You're just different if you do
Yeah.
that. What a beast. It's
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, no, Tampa, I really like that for Baker,
Mhm.
to be honest with you. They're putting a lot around him and they really trust him because that's
Yeah.
something that Cleveland didn't do. And quite frankly, this, I don't know how many times downfall you want to call it for Cleveland.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have gotten rid of Baker, and I think it's being
Yeah.
proven why. But
Yeah.
anywho,
Yeah. Yeah. The other pick I like, Carolina, McMillan, great piece. I think we
oh
talked
yeah.
about it. Bryce Young, what they were gonna do was offensive help for him. So that worked out well. Um, first
Maybe
round
that was
two.
going to be the better wide receiver for Jacksonville, to be honest
Hmm.
with you.
Yeah.
And if they would have stayed pat where they were at,
Hmm.
maybe that would have been it because there's a lot of talks about overthrows
Hmm.
from Lawrence.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then I think you called it multiple tight ends in the first round with Loveland going to Chicago
Hmm.
and then Warner from Penn State going to Indianapolis. So tight
Hmm.
ends were a hot commodity too. So overall, I think it was a great draft. Because I think we could talk about it for a long time because there
Oh
was a
yeah.
lot of picks. I think with Fidel, we talked about the Chargers a bit, or you guys did.
Hmm.
Cowboys, Vikings. Richie asking all the questions of all his signings, wanting to
Yep.
know the good or the bad. So,
Sam
overall,
Howell
yeah, Sam Howell. I like Sam Howell. I think it's a good pickup.
can throw for some yards.
Yeah.
If he just, he's going to the right place to
Mhm.
develop. So
Yeah. So,
I still think it's JJ, but good backup
yeah, good
with Sam
backup.
Howell.
So, yeah.
But yeah, no, great draft overall. Thought it was fun. It's always a fun time because we're just inching closer to football again. So
Yeah,
can't
no,
go
for
wrong.
sure. For sure. And the next we'll go to the next sport, NBA playoff updates. So it's been still in the first round. A lot of great games. OKC, Cleveland sweeping. Um,
Oh,
I think we called,
dismantling.
yeah, both these teams. The Grizzlies just
Yeah.
didn't show up, and we said Tyler Hero hurt us for the playing games, but he didn't hear our comments that he wasn't a star player for these playoffs or the first round
Yeah.
because this guy did not show up game four when he made the comments
Oh,
that they weren't going to get swept. They got swept.
but just a little. Yeah.
Yeah, just a
I think at
little.
one point, wasn't it like 68 to 25 or something like
Yeah,
that? It
yeah.
was just a
Yeah, I think it was like
beatdown.
111 at like the end of the third. It was like 111-68 or something,
Yep.
63 something. And I was just like, man, it's crazy. But overall, great, um,
Warriors
great
win.
games. Warriors won, so they're
They're
up
up 3-1.
3-1. Um, uh, and I'll say this: best series so far. I'm gonna call it Nuggets Clippers, one of the toughest series.
Yeah, you called it. Yeah.
Um, gonna be a great one. It's gonna be a tough one. I'm still pissed about the last game, how we lost it.
Yeah.
Um, Aaron
It's tough.
Gordon, I don't know if they played if that's how it was supposed to go. Um, but it's gonna be a battle to the end. I hope if we win, we have the energy against OKC because they're gonna get some rest. Same with the Nuggets. I think I'm calling it now. If they get past, they may struggle against OKC because the Joker, they're playing him so much. That guy's gonna run out of
Hmm.
gas eventually. I think we saw it in game three or game four, one of the games where he just struggled. Um,
Yep.
but overall, great series. I think we could still pull it off, but we just need to stop letting the turnover, win that turnover battle. We got to shoot better. Kawhi, vintage Kawhi. Harden needs to step up a little bit. He hasn't been playing his best, but still legit. Powell needs to step up as well, I think. Zubac. Zubac is a beast, man. I love. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lakers, for not thinking he was a star player. We made him into a star. Um, but yeah, I think for me, best series so far of the playoffs is Nuggets versus Clippers.
Completely agree. And it started early, with on the West
Hmm.
with just competitiveness altogether because we don't really see that in the East at
Yeah.
all. And yeah, you called it. It's just a really good series. But again, after this, let's say Denver wins and moves on. I
Hmm.
agree. They're going to be gassed.
Hmm.
Jokic, he's used a ton. He's going to
Hmm.
reach a point where, he's just too gassed to kind of keep up with what Oklahoma City
Hmm.
has. And quite frankly, maybe the Clippers would be better set up for a series like that.
Hmm.
They just have maybe a little bit more depth,
Yeah.
and can kind of sustain it a little bit more. And then you have the defensive greatness of Kawhi. Like
Hmm.
that dude, they call him the glove for a reason. He's
Yeah.
just a beast, and he's definitely a threat there. But yeah, great series there. That's another one. And then back east, like we said, not a whole lot of competitiveness. We
Yeah.
kind of foreshadowed this. Cleveland goes up 4-0. The Knicks series, we thought that one could be good out of the East,
Hmm.
but it's 3-1 now, kind of nearing the end
Hmm.
there. Um, and then Bucks Pacers. We kind of wanted to go a little bit into this topic,
Hmm.
John, of the future of Giannis
Hmm.
and what's going to happen because it is confirmed. Unfortunately, Dame Lillard has torn his Achilles,
Hmm.
and there was already speculation before that, and it's kind of been going on for a couple of seasons here and there,
Hmm.
but now it's more prominent of what's going to happen with Giannis. And, there's with the torn Achilles, this late in the year as well,
Hmm.
probably not going to see Dame next year.
Yeah.
Then that puts Dame, quite a bit older.
Hmm.
It's, what's really going to happen. You mentioned it earlier, Brooke Lopez. Is he going to head out west, go to
Hmm.
LA? He's nearing the end of his career as well. Is Giannis really looking for, just that second chance at,
Yeah.
getting another championship? So where's he going to find it? Personally, I'll call it now.
I think I know what
Warriors.
you're gonna call.
Yeah. He was speculated there
Hmm.
before. He's had some comments in the past on a live that, sparked that initial
Hmm.
thought, but that might be our big get to kind of pair up with Jimmy, Dre, and
Hmm.
Curry. Um, Maybe an opportunity there, but I do think Giannis is going to have out of Milwaukee.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think and it's sort of like with our Trey Young talk last week. Just so much, but just not the best place for him with Lillard going down. He won't be back next year. If he makes it back, it won't be till the playoffs, if they even make the playoffs.
Hmm.
So and like you mentioned, he's another year older. He's also came back from the blood clots, which, hopefully
Yeah.
everything with that's okay. So there's a lot of unknowns. The rest of the team is just pretty old. Kevin Porter Jr., he's been showing up. He's helping
Yep.
Giannis, but that's about it. I think I think Giannis is going to go to a big market, Golden State. There's the two LA teams, New York,
Yep.
Boston. I think it's going to be between those teams that he goes to one of those big markets to make more money, get that nice contract. And it's just the change he needs. He's a great superstar. If he goes to the Celtics, just give the Celtics the championship for the next few years. Um, in LA, I think give them a championship next year. If he goes to Golden State with Jimmy still there, give the championship. But I'm hearing if he goes to Golden State, you have to give up Jimmy, from what I'm been hearing, and I would take that still. I think it's a better
Yeah.
pick.
I would too. I would too. Yeah, I think more will happen with that.
Yeah.
Championship wise, I just think Giannis is more in his prime,
Hmm.
and Jimmy obviously has made an incredible
Yeah.
difference for this team, and we're arguably the best team in the league to end
Mm-hmm.
out the year. But yeah, Giannis is just a different
Mm-hmm.
beast. So
Yeah.
yeah, opportunities there. I agree though. Big market.
Yeah, he's gonna go to a big market, so we'll see. Just like with Trey Young. Trey Young could go to a lot of teams. Clippers could use him,
Mhm.
give some of that pressure away from Harden. Lakers, same thing. Get it away from Luca. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens with Giannis. But overall, what's the so far in the playoffs, what team do you think is the favorite after seeing, half of the first round?
Um, East Coast. God, Cleveland played really well, but I'm still gonna stick with Boston. I
Mhm.
think Boston out of the East is still the team to beat. Um, I think that they've had a tougher matchup with the Magic, to be honest with you. Just a lot more elements there versus what the Heat have.
Mhm.
So I think Boston's it. And then heading out west, the way OKC is played,
Mhm.
tough to deny. Shout out to my Warriors though. I
Mhm.
think that we're really playing well against we won with Jimmy down,
Mhm.
but I just think OKC, you can't deny how well they played against the Grizzlies, and just how deep that team is.
Mhm.
They're legit. So I think that's a tough one. So yeah, I'll go OKC West, Celtics East, and that's just kind of how it's shaping out so far.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Yeah, East-wise, I have the Celtics still. Like I said, I have the Knicks as my dark horse. The next series between the Knicks and Celtics going to be, I think, the one of the good ones in the second round. Cavaliers, they're going to have a tough matchup against Pacers, but I have the Celtics coming out of the East. West, I had OKC as a favorite a few weeks ago. I'm picking Nuggets or Clippers to win it, the West.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
and it's also just going to depend on how much gas they still have. Because I think if they could conserve some of it and make it through OKC without having to go 7 games, they one of the, whatever team gets out of that is could win it. Because like I said, you need the big guys in the West.
Hmm.
You need those centers, and we have two of the best centers, I think, right now in the West. So I think it'll be Nuggets or Clippers that make it from the West. Thunder, honestly, they're a young team. I think when it
Hmm.
comes to the pressure of the Nuggets or the Clippers, they're gonna fold. I think they're not ready. I don't think Shea's gonna. He's still gonna have great games, but the rest of the team, I think they're gonna fold, just because they killed the Grizzlies. But the Grizzlies, for me, I think we called it. They weren't that great.
Not at all. And then Jaw got injured,
Hmm.
obviously, and it's just a hot mess. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then that's where experience comes into play.
Hmm.
And that's a legitimate factor with all this. And
Hmm.
although they are a very talented team with OKC, I definitely see the side where the experience is going to factor in
Yeah.
eventually. Clearly, the first round's a little different, but you play either the Clippers, the Warriors, the Nuggets, you name it out of the West. All of
Hmm.
those teams have more experience
Yeah.
when it comes to playoff basketball.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how the West is gonna look. But I'm excited. Like I say, we'll see more games this week. Tomorrow, I think we have 4 games, so that's going to be some good basketball.
Hmm.
And then yeah, second round, I think that's where it's going to start getting more intense for a lot of these teams that are getting it easy this round. Um, but yeah, with the Warriors winning today, I think they'll get out of there. Hopefully, they can win the next one against the Rockets, give them a little break, and let Lakers Wolves go 7. So you guys are rested up for that series.
That would be great. Would love nothing more, you know. But again, I feel like we're getting kind of lucky, if we
Yeah,
get the Wolves, I
yeah,
feel like that's a
a
better
better matchup.
scenario.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, without a
Yeah,
doubt,
yeah.
we could be gifted access to the conference
Yeah,
finals.
no, for sure. So good games. We'll see what continues happening with the playoffs. We'll continue covering it, talking about it, giving you guys our thoughts. But we'll go to our next segment and our last segment for today. Sounds of Banter. So Sounds of Banter is where we talk about music stuff, anything music related in the news, upcoming. And one of the big things for us, I think that came up. We talked a lot about music festivals. We talked about our tops. The one that recently happened, Coachella, I think Stagecoach. Week 1 just happened this past week. Week 2 is coming
Hmm.
up. But with Coachella, they announced their 2026 dates for the weekend of April 10th and the weekend of April 17th of 2026. And like I said, this is our too early of a prediction of the 4 possible headliners that we would want to see and we may think are going to be there. And I can start with my first one. Uh, I think the one that might be there, Bad Bunny. I
Ah,
think
yep,
Bad Bunny might be a headliner. He's coming out with a lot of new songs, and and a lot of his songs, from his recent albums, they're just great. He always has a lot of great guests, and that's I think the one thing with Coachella is having those surprise people show up for your sets. And I think Bad Bunny, his concert the last 2 years have been the talk of the town, the must see ticket. So having him at Coachella, I think him coming out with a new album probably within the next year, good way to start off his new tour. So I
for
got Bad
sure.
Bunny.
I like it. Yeah, I definitely could see that happening. That was a name that I thought about putting on this list. Love Bad Bunny.
Yeah,
One I will go with, I think Bruno Mars.
that's a
He's
good
continuing to
one.
release new music. Love his music. He's got to pay off a lot of gambling debt.
Yes.
You know, but love Bruno Mars, and I think that he would be great for Coachella next year. And hopefully is a preview to another tour for him.
hmm Yeah, he has this new he has a bunch of and like with Bad Bunny, he does a lot of songs with so many people that he could bring Lady Gaga on. He could bring
Mhm.
that one girl from Pink, the K-pop band that he does that one song with. Like,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's gonna be the biggest thing ever. So
APT.
um yeah, APT. So yeah, Bruno Mars, good one. Almost had him on my list, but I had a few other people.
He could do Fat, Juicy, and Wet
Oh
as
yeah.
well.
That'd be that'd be an awesome one just to sort of see
What a
how he
hit.
pulls it off.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah. Uh my next one, the one I think, and this is sort of going on that pop route because there's always like a pop person that headlines Coachella. Olivia Rodrigo, and the one
Mm.
some of the one of the big reasons never has headline Coachella. I think she was only a guest performer, a few years ago. But she always comes up with new albums about like every 2 years, and it's about that time, you know, since her last album dropped. So I think if she comes out with her new album, great way to sort of start her tour with her opening or her headlining Coachella. And like I mentioned a few weeks ago, Cascade mentioned this is the start for a lot of people's tour, Coachella, so starting it off hot will help you sell more tickets and start off your tour awesome. So I think Olivia Rodrigo could be one of the headliners.
For sure. No, that's a great one. Gonna go a different route here, John. Sorry if I'm stealing him. Calvin Harris. I think that he is phenomenal. I think that he brings EDM back. We've talked
hmm
about him a bunch with Sounds of Banter. I think that he is definitely headline worthy. And the other day, he released the clip of, some new music
hmm
that's going to be coming out as well. It's been some time, right, since we've had some Calvin
Yeah.
Harris music.
hmm
So can't wait for, what he's cooking up because it's always good.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was one on my list. I got to figure out someone else to throw on
Uh-oh.
there. But yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
I was the same with Calvin Harris. Yeah, he's coming out with new music. It's been a while since he's really done concerts or performed big. So I think that's a good way for him to come back into the fold of the music industry. And EDM is taking over a lot right now. There's a lot of new EDM artists. I think that's what sort of dominated Coachella this past year. So Calvin Harris is one. Another EDM artist I have is Skrillex. He
Mm,
made his return
yep.
to Ultra in Miami. I think everybody was surprised. He's coming out with new music too. So I think Skrillex also will be a great headliner. Haven't heard new music from him in a while, so I was excited to see him come out. New hairdo, looks very different than with his long hair.
Uh-huh.
So very, very cool to see him and excited to see what he does next.
For sure. Funny you bring up Skrillex. Me and Theo and Ariel were jamming
Oh
to
yeah.
some Skrillex Boomerang
Oh yeah.
in the car
Boomerang's
in
a good
the
one.
truck the other day, and he was just Ariel just kind of does her little
Head
in
nod.
the car seat, and then my son was like just kind of getting
Yeah.
into it and like just that dubstep kind of like
Yeah.
vibe to it.
hmm
He loves it. So love to see that though. Next
Yeah.
generation kind of vibing with the
Yeah.
EDM stuff. Really stoked on that. That's some new news for here in the
hmm
Wolfgram household. So that's good. Let's see, where did I want to go next? Sorry, I'm between a bunch. A big name I'm seeing and a realistic name that I could see would be SZA. I
hmm
think she's constantly releasing music.
Yeah.
She's, like you said, she's in songs that just encompass a lot of
hmm
different artists and notable artists.
Yeah.
So I think that she could be another one that is definitely headline worthy and would be a great performance as well,
hmm
just for all the hits she has.
Yeah. Yeah. She has a lot of hits. I don't think she's ever headlined or been. a main person. I think she's always been a
Sure.
guest at Coachella. So yeah,
Yep.
I think that'd be a good one. My last one, so, you took Calvin Harris, so I'm sort of thinking,
Idiot.
um, and it's always, they always bring someone sort of classic, and I think the one we might see that has a lot of bangers, Rihanna.
Ah, yeah.
Rihanna.
It's a
I
good one.
think if she comes, it'll be good, and especially if like Calvin Harris is there that weekend, bringing him out for, some of their duo songs. I don't know if she's done some with Bruno Mars, but like she's with so many people that are probably already at Coachella, bringing them on as guests, and for her too, I think her last real big performance was the Super Bowl
Yep.
a few years ago. So I think it's time for her to make her comeback. She always comes out with great songs. Bring out Eminem. You haven't seen
Oh,
Eminem.
yeah.
That would just break the internet. Rihanna and Eminem performing at Coachella. So I think Rihanna would be. Hope it happens, but like I say, possible headliner.
You know what would really be legit? Would be she performs Umbrella, but she brings out Tom Holland because of his
That'd be
performance on Lip
that
Sync.
dude. That would break the internet even more. Rihanna and
It
Tom
would.
Holland doing Umbrella, doing the
Yep.
dancing with rain falling on them.
Imagine.
Uh,
Imagine. Same attire as the
yeah.
performance as well for Tom because
Uh,
hell of a performance. Like
yeah.
that
Oh
was
yeah.
great.
Vera,
Um,
Vera loves that performance. She always watches it
yeah.
every now and
That's
then.
Spider-Man. But no, that would be again, just affiliations
Mhm.
with other artists.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Rihanna's a great one. I think that's perfect.
Mhm.
Other I've mentioned four, right? I guess I can kind of jump into
I think you've done three because I think I
I've done
started
three.
it.
Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Um, I know we've kind of pooped on him a bit here and there, but Drake, I could see Drake making a
Hmm.
comeback tour after Kendrick
Hmm.
ate him up a bit. I'm not gonna lie, I do really like the song Nokia.
Hmm.
I vibe to that a lot. I think it's a great song, and I could definitely see, Drake again, comeback tour. We kind of talked about that on the show. Does he stay quiet, move forward?
Hmm.
I think he can definitely stay quiet and move forward at the same time and just come
Yeah,
out with hits because he's had hits in the past.
he has.
And I think that would be a good one. I don't know, that's another thought. I know you say that they always go classic. I feel like Calvin would be a classic hit, but I've seen Taylor Swift is another act that, to bring back
Hmm.
Tame Impala. I love Tame
Hmm.
Impala. I think that's another fun one.
Yeah.
Um, there's definitely some honorable mentions out there
Hmm.
that, could be out there too.
Yeah.
But
Hey, one that just came up in my mind, Outcast.
oh, that'd be a good one.
I think they're getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So
That'd be legit.
having them do their old school music, that's a classic, so that'd be cool to see actually, Outcast.
Definitely. What about Black Eyed Peas? I don't know.
Black Eyed
Like,
Peas.
yeah,
You got to
that's
see if
another one.
Fergie's voice is back, after her
Yeah,
little national
national
anthem.
anthem. Yeah, that'd be a good one. Um, yeah, there's definitely a lot out there that
Hmm.
a big one was that I've seen mentioned a ton is Radiohead.
That'd be
Um,
that'd be pretty cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I guess supposedly rumors have it they were offered like upwards of $10 million in the past,
Oh,
and
man.
it was still tough to negotiate. Don't know what dollar amount
Damn.
they'd have to get to, but definitely an iconic band, maybe to get back.
Yeah. No, yeah. That'd be a good one too.
Miley Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus. Bring her back
Is
as
she
Hannah
headline?
Montana.
Yeah,
Has to be Hannah
right.
Montana, not Miley Cyrus. You got to bring Hannah Montana
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe Selena Gomez could be another name, right?
Yeah, that could be
Bieber,
another one. Yeah. If she gets
Bieber.
better.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Maybe not with that
Yeah.
last song he was hinting.
Yeah. So no, yeah, but there's a lot. Like I say, I think this is where we sort of just talk about it, come up with our top four. Yeah, let us know what you guys think. Who do you want to see headline Coachella? I think that's the big
Yeah.
question because I think Coachella listens to a lot of people too. Like who's coming up? I think the other one I hear a lot, Chaperone. I think she might come up with her album,
Okay.
so I think she could possibly headline. But I have a few others that I would prefer to see, but wouldn't hate it if it was her.
For sure. Yeah. And then you think they'd ever go like Spanish music like Fuerza Regida
Mm.
or
I
Peso
I
Pluma?
don't Peso Pluma maybe, but I don't know if he's still on the rise. I think, like I said, Bad Bunny's probably the closest to
Yeah.
do it. I think like those other grupos, I don't think they'd headline, but I think they'd be like next to the headliners,
Got
you
it.
know.
Okay.
So Grupo
Y- Can't go
Frontera,
wrong
stuff like
with Bad Bunny though.
yeah,
That's a great one.
yeah.
Love that.
I would love to see Bad Bunny again. Like I say, he has a lot of good songs that have come out that a lot of people listen to, and he hasn't really performed, so I
Yep.
want to see that. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Saw him playing dominoes the other day, by the way, in Puerto Rico. I think he was just on the streets randomly playing
That's
dominoes with
funny.
some older gentlemen. Looked like he
Yeah,
was having a good time and trying to
yeah,
stay low profile.
yeah. Like I say, so he's saying low profile because he's doing something, and I think the
Mm,
way to reveal it, Coachella, it'll be the best way.
love it.
So we'll see. But yeah, that's our Coachella future picks for headliners. We'll see if we're right. If we're right, man, we should be gambling a little bit more, doing more sports betting. Um, but yeah,
Absolutely.
we enjoy the music. We enjoy Coachella. Like I say, hopefully one of our bucket lists is to do a show from Coachella, vlog from Coachella, our experience. Do food reviews as well because we love food. So a lot of
Definitely.
options for us at Coachella. But that's our episode for this week. So thank you everybody joining us, listening to us, um, checking us out. As always, if you haven't subscribed to YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit that follow button, get alerts when we put out new episodes. And as always, leave your comments, your thoughts on, all our shorts, our full videos. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. We enjoy the banter. We enjoy responding to all the comments and having those discussions with you guys.
Definitely. Yeah, and we're not going to shy away from our takes or anything and
Mhm,
always going to ride or die with those. So, always appreciate the input on any topic and question of the week, I think you nailed it, John. Moving forward with,
mhm,
who do you want to see at Coachella next year?
mhm.
I think that's a great one. So
Yeah.
let's see what happens.
Yeah, let us know your guys' top, picks of Coachella headliners, and we'll discuss it a little bit more next week. We'll,
Hmm.
whoever all the comments, we'll bring them up. We'll have those discussions and sort of come up with a consensus, just a joint answer for us
Love
of
it.
Banter on the Rocks. But yeah, thank you everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy, the ends of April, and we're going on to May. So
Yeah.
yeah,
God, time flies. It's crazy.
time flies. Yeah, but we'll see you guys. Enjoy.
Peace.